Hi everyone, I'm going to show you how to draw eyes step by step using two types of pencil. And we're going to start off with a HB, so nice and light. And the first thing you're going to do is draw a dotted line or a dashed line all the way across your page, pressing on really lightly with your pencil. Okay, the next thing you're going to do is a small curve, and that's going to turn into sort of a big hill along the top, and you're going to go all the way to the other side of the line. And then we're going to do another small curve at the bottom, and sort of like a bowl shape, a shallow bowl shape along the bottom, which is about half the size of the top hill. And look how lightly I'm pressing on with my pencil. I don't want it to press on very hard at all. At this point it's going to look a bit like a squashed lemon. Okay, then we're going to add a line from the top hill, really lightly curve that down to meet the bottom line, and it's going to be parallel to that line that you've already drawn, so they're going to be next to each other. Then we're going to draw a little curve in the corner, and that's going to be like a backwards C. And then we need to start drawing the iris. So the iris isn't going to be a circle in the middle of the eye, we can't normally see the whole thing. So we're going to draw a curve on the left, and check you've got the same amount of space on the left and the right in the corner of the eye, and then a nice curve on the right. Now the pupil right in the middle is going to be a circle, and you need to try and make sure it's as round as possible, but don't worry if it's not perfectly round at this point, because you can fix it later on. What you can do is measure from the edge of the iris to the pupil to try and help you keep that a circle shape. Okay, then next up we're going to draw some little rectangles in the pupil, and this is where the light is going to hit. So just really small, 1, 2 or 3 little rectangles. That one's actually triangle shape. And then you're going to have the outline of your eye. So next up we're going to add another detail line along the top arch, so just over the original hill that you drew, and then one just underneath the bottom, and we're going to start to add some shading. So our last step, we're going to start really lightly with the pupil not colouring in the little rectangles and triangles that we did before. And then just on the inside of the top hill, a really light bit of shading all the way along. Keep moving your paper around so you're pointing your pencil to the line to keep your shading neat, all the way to the very corner. And then we're going to do some shading over from the very corner, again, the lines we've already drawn. I'm still pressing on really lightly with my pencil, so my pencil's almost flat to the paper. And then underneath that bottom curve, a little bit more really light shading. So not the inside line, the very outside lines. And then we're going to shade along the detail line at the top, just like a crinkle, a crease, a wrinkle if you're old like me. And then we're going to start adding some shading along the outside of the iris. Now look at how I point my pencil towards each line, and my pencil's almost flat to the paper, and it's still not as dark as the pupil in the centre. Okay, next up we're going to start adding some eyelashes, and these are very, very light. They're not straight lines, they're like curves, and it's almost like a backward C shape, and they gradually get bigger towards the edge, and we do the same at the bottom. So smaller from the left hand side, gradually getting a little bit bigger. They're not all the same size, and they don't all get bigger then bigger then bigger. They're all a little bit random, so be creative. Just don't make them too dramatic unless they're wearing makeup. And then you can start to make some of them a little bit darker. Okay, then I'm going to move on to either a 4 or higher, maybe a 6B if you've got it. If you don't have it, don't worry, 2B is fine. And then we're going to start working with our darker shades. So again, start in the centre, on the pupil, start from the outside in, And if you couldn't draw a circle before, this is where you can start to fix it. You're going to go all the way around, nice and slow, take your time, and you can see those rectangles starting to show the highlights in the pupil now because I'm not shading them in. Shade in different directions to get a nice smooth finish. Next up we're going to go again along the outside of the iris. Keep spinning your paper around like I am here. Keep your pencil nice and flat. We're not going all the way into the pupil, we're just going around the outside. And I'm still not pressing on really hard, it's just because I'm using a 4B pencil. The shading's a bit darker, I'm not pressing on very hard at all. And I keep going in slightly different directions to get a nice smooth tonal blend. Now the iris has little flecks and lines and dashes in it, so we can start to draw those in, still not going over the highlight triangles and rectangles that we drew before. And generally they'll go from the outside of the iris and point towards the inside, and you can just start to see how I'm pressing a little bit harder. I've got lines of different thicknesses and different lengths going into the pupil, and these are the details on everyone's eye. So because we've got eyelashes, we've got a shadow across the top of our eye, our eyeball I should say. So I've just added that shadow in along the top, and I'm going to work over the top of everything I've already done and add these details in to the iris. I'm going to make some more darker shadows along the inside of my top hill, so the upper eyelid. Remember the eyeball's round, so the corners, the left and the right corners, are going to be slightly darker. I'm going to work my way around the iris again and building up these layers of tone, and just make some of my lines a little bit clearer. My pencil is really sharp, I keep sharpening my pencil. I'm working right in the corner, just using the very tip of my pencil, still very lightly. Then I've got my detail or my wrinkle line along the top, which I need to make a little bit darker now. And I'm going to shade from that line down towards the eyeball. So I haven't pressed on hard at all yet. This is all just lightly working over and over the shadows that I've drawn. Okay, so back to the corner of the eyeball, and back to that shadow from the eyelashes, and then back to the edge of the iris, and I'm going to add some shadows under the eye. Nice and light, use the side of your pencil, keep it almost flat to the paper. And where I drew those eyelashes before, I'm going to go back over them with my 4B pencil and make them much darker, and they're going to start to look a little bit more realistic. They're all slightly different heights. They generally get bigger towards the right hand side, and the same along the bottom, they generally get bigger towards the right. And now we're going to start working with some pressure, because I'm happy with the way everything is. If I needed to rub anything out, I would have done that before. And this is where I'm going to start to show a big or a high range of tones, and I'm aiming for at least 5. So that wrinkle line, I've added a bit more pressure. I'm just shading over that again. Add some shadows along the bottom of the eye. Going to add a little bit more shading underneath the eyelashes, all the way around. You can start to make some of those lines a little bit clearer again. And even though I'm applying pressure, I'm not pushing the pencil right onto the page. I'm still building my layers of tone up. Now, I'm going to work again over the iris and all of those lovely lines and dashes and marks that we can see in people's eyes. We're going to try and bring them out a little bit more. This is going to make the eye look round and give it a little bit more depth. So work your way all the way around. Now to stop your paper smudging, keep turning your page around so you're pointing your pencil at your work instead of got your hand over the top of it. I'm going to make my shadow underneath the eyelashes a little bit darker. And all I'm doing now is looking for where I need to start adding some shade. Definitely in the corners, they'll be much darker than the middle. Keep shading in different directions. Now again, I need my eyelashes to be a little bit darker, so I'm going to work a bit more slowly. Put a little bit more pressure onto my eyelashes. Make sure my pencil stays nice and sharp to keep the shape really clear. A little bit more shading along the bottom, and we can do a little bit of light shading along the top just to suggest that it's not floating on a piece of white paper. Making some of my lines a little bit darker, and then checking any bits that don't stand out or aren't clear enough, going over those, and that's basically it. Well done.